So finally, we've gotten around to doing another country lead study. I know it's been a while, but this one is rather long and it's chock full of loads of information and ideas, so I'm hoping that makes up for the wait. The chord progression that we're going to be playing over is a really nice one. It's the opening 4 bars from the changes to the song Sweet Dreams, a bit of a country classic. There's some fantastic versions out there from Patsy Cline, Jim Campilongo, Roy Buchanan and the Telecasters, to name just a few. So definitely check those out. So let me just quickly map out the chord changes and then we'll get straight into the lead study. So we're in a 12/8 time, very similar to the feel of Sleepwalk. In fact, I always get these titles mixed up, Sweet Dreams and Sleepwalk, both with a similar kind of doo-wop 1950s vibe. It's kind of confusing. But this one goes like this. You have G, A7, D, D over C, D over B, D over A. That's it, we're just going to loop that part of the progression round and round. Gives us plenty of stuff to work with. Now one thing of note there that I want to just point out before we move on is that interesting little rundown over the D chord. D, and then a D major triad, but with a C bass note. It's the same thing as a D7 chord in third inversion. Then D major with a B in the bass, same thing as a B minor 7. And then D with the A in the bass. So that's the 5th of the chord in the bass. Nice little rundown. Leads us back to the G chord at the start of the progression. So if we're talking functional harmony, we can think of this progression as a 4, 5, 1, with this little suggestion here of this 1 becoming the 5 of 4 to lead us neatly back to G. So you could be thinking of kind of D7 material there, and that's going to be really useful as we get into this lead study. You can get hold of the mega pack of materials that accompany this lesson at the links in the description. You'll get the tab and notation for my entire lead study in both Guitar Pro and PDF formats. And for those of you with the full version of Guitar Pro, you'll also notice that I've embedded my original audio file in with the score. And you'll also get my original audio file plus my backing track. And for this lesson, I'd say that's absolutely essential, because I'm not here today to break down every phrase note for note, fret numbers, finger numbers and all of that. That's what the sheets are for. Today we're looking at the bigger picture and I want to take you through the concepts that I'm thinking about and neat ways to organise these ideas. Right, so our first phrase, we need to play something that fits on a G chord, and we start with a simple G major pentatonic run and then straight into the steel bends kind of stuff. So this here, we're bending that 10th fret of the B string a whole tone and then adding the 10th fret on the top string above it. If you think about what we're doing there, we're bending into the top 2 notes of this G major triad. And triads are about the easiest way to get into some of these country bends. Just visualize your triads on the top 3 strings and find bendy ideas within those frameworks. So this is one of them, of course, bending into the major third. You could also bend on the G string here, a semitone, up to the root. The idea is you're bending from one note from the parent scale. In this case, we can be kind of picturing the G major scale. Bending from one of those notes into one of the notes from the triad. So those would be your options within this particular shape here. Now let's extend that thinking to your other triad positions. So that was the root position G major. What about second inversion G major? If you took the top 2 strings again and bend in to this 8th fret from the 7th fret, you've got the same thing we just had here on the G and B strings. It's a really nice bend and one that you'll see that we use later on in the piece. And then what about your first inversion? You can do this bend and then return it, because this time you're bending from a triad note away from the triad, bending the 5th up to the 6th and then returning it. You could go onto the G and B strings and bend that 3rd up to a sus4. So that's interesting, right? Gets you away from the triad and back into it. If you want to get into the triad from elsewhere, you can think of one of these great Hendrix-isms that I'm always referencing. Going from the 2nd to the 3rd degree of the scale and adding another triad note on top. That would be the G and B strings, or all 3. Again, we'll use all these ideas throughout this piece. Okay, then when we get to the A7 in the next bar, I'm just suspending a simple A7 chord shape here. I'm sure that looks pretty familiar, like an open D7 chord that's been dragged out of the water all the way up to A7. This sus4 on top of this shape is a very common kind of outlaw country vibe. Check out Waylon Jennings, Marty Stewart, guys like that are a fan of using that sound. It's kind of got a birdsy feel to it as well, almost a little Beatlesy in places. Lovely sound that, underused nowadays in my opinion. Now we go from that down to these sixths, again where you can be thinking of an A major triad there, and just hollowing out the middle. This one that we use as a passing chord could be seen as a B minor triad with the middle hollowed out, or a G major triad with the middle hollowed out. Either way, the thing you want to be really thinking of there is the A7 scale in sixths, which of course is the same thing as the D major scale. So we're thinking A mixolydian scale-wise if you want to be fancy, but if you want to just think of the parent scale D major to help you find these, it's also a good way to do it. Anyway, adding chromaticism between some of these points, between the 2 and the 3 usually. If we're looking at the top string, the major third, the 2 and the 1 of the A chord, that's where you get a lot of that country chromaticism. On the A7 you can also move it down chromatically from the root to the flat 7, especially if you're then going to resolve to D major, as you'd often expect, right? With an A7 that's usually going to take you to a D chord. All of these things sound great. Now I know we're only in the second bar here, but do remember that I'm pointing out the important concepts that are then going to be used repeatedly throughout the rest of this piece. So once we have these ideas under our fingers, we're just going to then go through the piece and spot where it's all happening, and we'll pick up some speed, I'm sure. So the next phrase is a really cool one. Again, if you've got a dominant 7th chord, you can be thinking of the arpeggio, the A7 arpeggio, or the A mixolydian scale that we just spoke about. Or you can be thinking A minor blues, often with the addition of the major third somehow. It's a good way to suggest A7 because the minor blues scale, of course, has the flattened 7 in it, and we associate dominant chords with the blues sound, so we kind of expect to hear a bit of a blues scale kind of run on a chord like that. Adding in the major third just gives it some solid harmonic direction. So this bend we do here is taken from that A minor blues scale. We've got the flat 7 and the 4th, bending the 4th up a whole step to make it the 5th, and then bringing in the major third, like I just spoke about, bringing in some harmonic context, so we're thinking A7. That can sound really good when you hammer in from a semitone below. I think I do that later on another chord. Another thing that's really nice is to try and keep the root on top. You can try and keep it ringing all the way through. A bit harder, but it sounds great. You could also bring in that root note on the D string, and even hop back to the flat 7. Very cool stuff. Notice how I'm playing a lot of these things in double stop form, and often that's going to require hybrid picking, which I'm using throughout, where you might use just 2 fingers to pick the top 2 strings, and then the plectrum on the 3rd string maybe, that kind of thing. Or using just the pick on one string and the 2nd finger or the 3rd finger to pluck another one. Whatever you prefer. Also practice doing little rolls along the strings, like banjo rolls. It's all part of the tone and feel of this stuff. And make sure that the notes you're plucking with the fingers stand up volume-wise and sit alongside the plectrum note. Don't let them get drowned out. Now speaking of that, our next phrase is this, which is one of these real classic country moves, where we're going from an A major triad and then hammering on to turn it into a D major triad to land on the chord change that's appearing here. Again, be very cautious when you hammer on not to block out that ringing top note. And again, hybrid pick, so using the plectrum, the 2nd and 3rd fingers all at the same time, and hammer on. Now the next phrase is a nod to the Roy Buchanan version of this, where the melody goes, We pretty much do that, but we put a little roll in on the D major triad, and then another bend here. And then we want to suggest D7, because we're heading back to a G chord after all, and this D7 can function as a bit of a turnaround, and we play this. It's a great little idea, I love the sound of that. It's an A minor triad, but over a D7 chord it sort of suggests D9, doesn't it? The tricky thing here is bending on that G string. Notice how I'm not using my third finger to play this chord. That's so I can get a bit more leverage on that G string to get the full step bend. It's a tricky move. It's a good one to add to your arsenal of options though over a dominant chord. D7, there's your A minor triad, there's the bend that suggests D9. So as well as all that material we spoke about on A7, you know, the 6 from the Mixolydian scale, you could do all of that on D7 of course. There was also that great minor pentatonic thing. That can be done on the D chord of course. You almost want to categorize these ideas in terms of the chord quality. You know, have a bunch of major licks and ideas, a bunch of minor licks and ideas, and in this case, a bunch of dominant chord licks and ideas. The phrase that comes after that, again, is very much triad based. If we think G major, you've got these two notes on the G and B strings, the root and the third. If you were then just going to go through a G major scale in thirds like that, you'd have these notes next. You know, A with C on top. And then here, you're back to a G major triad, the third and the fifth on top. Sounds a bit like that brown-eyed girl lick. The thing again that we can do to make it sound more country is to put in that passing chromatic chord between the 2 and the 3. Works every time. In this case, we take that one step further and bend, which again is a tricky little maneuver where you have to bend both of these notes a half step each. When I've spoken about that before, the advice that I gave, I still stand by, which is to focus on bending the B string more than the G. And you might find that the G then just follows along for the ride. Usually if you focus on bending the G string, you'll overbend that one and underbend the B. It sounds pretty horrendous. Now over the A7. Again, it's all this stuff we had earlier. It's just on the next string set. I'm putting in that passing chord again. You know, again, it's in the same place. The 1, the 2, and the 3. The passing chord you could think of as the flat 3. I'm also putting this fifth on top. Quite a nice little sound. And then I play, which is a cool sound as well. This is A7, right? That's just part of an A7 chord voicing that would look like this, where you've got the flat 7, the third, the fifth, and the flat 7 again. This time I'm taking away the A string and just using this little triad sort of voicing. It's also a diminished triad, by the way. It's good to kind of try and relate these things together. This is a C-sharp diminished triad, which would be the 7th chord in the key of D, and that's a dominant chord type. The 5th chord is also the dominant chord, of course, and that's A7. Makes sense, right? That if you take an A major triad and add the triad from the 7th degree of the scale on top, what you actually get is a fully extended 5 chord, an A7. And then I go to the root there and then bend to resolve to D, using that triad bending we spoke about earlier. You know, trying to get to the 3 from the 2. Essentially picturing this as a destination. The little roll here is another one of those banjo rolls. In the picking hand, I'm going plectrum, 2nd finger, 3rd finger, plectrum again. It's a good exercise. You might drive someone mad with it, but that's what exercises are for. The next voicing, again, is triad-related thinking, where I'm picturing D major, this part of a triad here on the top 3 strings. But I'm looking for something more colourful than just the root to put on top. You could have the root, the major 7, or in this case the 6th. It's good just to experiment that way. A very simple idea, something that's quite Chet Atkinsy in nature, which is just to take a triad and experiment with other scale notes on top. The 9, that's beautiful as well. All valid versions of major chord flavour and tonality. and then slide down to the root, and then one of those triad ideas we spoke about right at the beginning. On the G chord, we're now doing on the D chord, where you're seeing this triad and bending the 3 to a 4 and back, giving you that lovely sus sound. And then, again, we need to suggest D7, so we just play this fragment of a D7 first inversion chord. Resolve to G. It's very pretty. It's got a real Jim Campilongo flavour, that. Lovely little manoeuvre. Here are just 2 notes from your G major triad. Again, because we've hollowed out the middle, we have sixths now as opposed to just thirds. And then we walk up, that same kind of idea as before. The 2, the flat 3 and the 3, and then a bit more of a little passing thing here. And then we simply do the same thing a whole tone higher for the A chord. Picking wise, we bring in a little bit of extra flavour with some of this sort of Spanishy Mexican kind of vibe. It's a nice little thing, that. Plectrum and third finger, back and forth. And then we go. Again, just extending the idea further onto the top strings, still thinking A7, and how it ties back to D, where again you can very clearly see we're hollowing out this triad. Now we play one of these kind of classic Motown or Hendrixy kind of things. Just again, thinking of things that you can build from triads. D major, and down to this D major. And then we take that phrase we spoke about on the A7 earlier, the one that's from your A minor blues scale, landing on the major third. We do that on the D7 here, so we're thinking D minor blues scale, or even just D minor pentatonic will do. And bend these notes here, also put the root on top first, and then play the major third, again to give it some harmonic grounding, so we hear the D7. And then, same trick from earlier, hammering on from D to G this time instead of from A to D. And then taking all of those things we spoke about down here, a whole octave higher, over the G chord. So we're thinking G major triad, and bending away from or into notes from that, and then move up a whole tone. Over the A chord, same principle, right? Bend away at these parts of your triads. Hard to go wrong almost. And while we're still on this A7, we're going to take the idea from earlier that we played on the D7 and move it to A7. All I ever think to find that is I'm looking for the flat 7 on top. And again, we do one of these banjo rolls with raked or muted, strings. So I'm muting G and B to get that nice percussive strike, and then resolving to the root of the D chord. And then we play this bluesy double stop run over the D7. Again, combining notes from a minor pentatonic with notes from the major scale or the major pentatonic. This first double stop, by the way, is a great one, very Charlie Christian. And it's just the 6th and the flattened third together, creating a lovely kind of spicy tritone interval. And again, I'm hybrid picking there. And then, over the D chord, a B minor triad, B flat minor passing chord triad, A minor. So it's the same principle as the A minor earlier over the D7. It's just the next inversion down of that. Again, it's implying D9, isn't it? And that chromaticism in between is very country. Check out my Crazy Arms lead study if you've not seen that. That goes into a lot of depth on that idea. But in short, if you found your A minor triads everywhere, even just on one string set, and then worked on getting to them from a whole tone above, some pretty killer sounding country stuff over a D7 chord. Check it out if I get my looper involved. Classic country sounding stuff that, just brilliantly simple. Now this next run of the progression kicks off with some more of those two notes taken from Triad bendy approach things, where you've got a G major triad here, you take the top two strings and you bend in from a semitone below, and then this part here, thinking of this triad, the root position, and bending in a whole tone up to the third of the chord, and then move along to the A7. You could take the same two ideas, or you can do this, which is really nice. Again, thinking of the A chord here with this root position triad, and then, because it's A7, you can have the flat 7 on top of this one and bend up to the 5th, so from D to E. Again, that's very much suggesting A7, so it'll only work on an A dominant 7th chord. So be careful where you put that idea. And then resolve to D major, again just thinking of this triad. So really the whole run there, we're picturing this, 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 and then this. All just simple little fragments of those. It's important to be really accurate with your bends and don't overbend or underbend. Try and make it sound almost mechanical like a pedal steel. Then a nice Roy Buchanan or Jim Campilongo kind of idea over the D chord. Harmonics here. Again, you can just be thinking of this D major triad. Triads are so insanely useful, aren't they? I mean, you can use them over other chords entirely, like we did with these rundowns. You can use them over the target chord to find places to bend from and to, but you can also use them to visualize how to use harmonics correctly. So that's a D major chord, and then bend behind the nut on the B string, take that note a semitone up to suggest sus4. And then a bit of a bluegrass phrase over that D chord. It's like a D major pentatonic deal, but with that passing flat 3 again. And then we have more of these big bends down here over the G chord, the ones we spoke about earlier. G major triad, bending a whole step from the 2 to the 3, get all 3 strings with a nice, confident hybrid picked pull. And then we have, move it up a whole step for the A chord, and then resolve to a D major, thinking of this triad. Told you, it's all just triads. And then one of these tricky little phrases over the D major, bending a whole step to the major 3rd, and then while that's in place, reach back and double the note on the top string, and then move that up a semitone, and release the bend and come back to the root. A hard phrase that, especially at that part of the fretboard where you've got extra tension on the strings and the wider spacing of the frets. Higher up it's much easier. But yeah, good one to practice for your hand strength and maintaining good pitch. And then more of that major pentatonic with the flat 3 as a passing note. That kind of thing. I love the sound of that. Find a lot of that stuff in bluegrass. Check out my acoustic bluegrass rhythm playing lesson where we get into some of these kind of riffs and phrases that are common in that style. I'll link to it in the description. Now for the final run round the progression, we really sort of simmer things down and play with a bit more space, both in terms of our timing, but also single notes instead of double stops the whole time. G major, triad right there. Little embellishment, again using that passing note that sits between the 2 and the 3, the flat and 3. Then landing the root of the A chord. And one of these Jerry Reed-isms. Because again, if you're thinking A7, you could be thinking of that blues scale that we spoke about earlier to help suggest the A7 because of the inclusion of the flat 7 in there. It's a nice little move, pulling off on the 1st fret of the D string to the open string while maintaining the root on top. And then the minor to major third, then the root. And again on the D chord, major pentatonic, but with that flat 3, it was like a passing note to add a bit more of that bluegrass colour. And then to finish things off, we're just going to sit on this D chord and just kind of arpeggiate and get this open note on top, this beautiful D sus2 kind of sound. And then that bluesy thing we just did on A7, but on the D chord, and then finish with another very common bluegrass-ism. So although there's a lot of concepts covered in this piece and it's a long lead study, hopefully you've noticed that the majority of this falls firmly in the camp of triads and understanding them confidently, not just as standalone devices, but devices that you can bend into and away from, that kind of stuff, and also devices that can exist on top of a totally different chord entirely. So not just thinking of like an A minor as an A minor triad, but thinking of it as the upper extensions of a D9 chord. Those things are incredibly useful and important. Learning the triads at face value is only step one. Once you've really got them down, you'll start to use them as other things, more adventurous things perhaps. But they need to be down in their fundamental form first, obviously. The other concepts we repeatedly found ourselves using was that idea of the major pentatonic with the flat 3 as a passing note to bring in some of that authentic bluegrass and country flavour. And of course, technique-wise, we covered a lot of ground, from hybrid picking to making sure your bends are nicely intonated and in tune, and also double stops and sixths and all that stuff. Very important principal things to be working on. So I would recommend that you learn this lead study note for note and get to a point where you can play it along in real time with my recording, and then simply start to absorb certain licks that stand out above the others, things that you like best, and try and bring them into your own solos. Make sure you can see the bigger picture around what's being outlined with each of those phrases. Okay, so for gear talk, it's all pretty simple with this. This is my absolutely brilliant Nacho Caster Tele, and I was on the bridge pickup the whole time with everything all the way up. I'm running into a Greer Lightspeed overdrive pedal, but I have the drive all the way off and the volume all the way up and the tone control right in the middle. And that's just pushing the front end of my Lazy J20 Tweed style amp, just enough to make it compress a little bit, but not really overdrive. I'm also using the Strymon Flint for reverb, and that's on the 60s spring setting. The strings that are on here are 10 gauge Diodario NYXLs, although usually I opt for the Pyramid pure nickel strings on this guitar, but these were the strings that were close to hand at the time, and they sound and feel brilliant. NYXLs to me are a really good kind of default string choice. It's hard to go wrong. And the plectrum is the one that I use the most for a sort of telecaster or electric guitar playing, and it's one of these Dunlop H3s. Okay, and there we have it. Now remember that a big part of being able to play these sorts of things and come up with them yourself is to have the sound of these things firmly in your mind and in your ears. And that only happens by listening to a lot of this kind of music. I'd highly recommend listening to a lot of the classic country players, people like Hank Williams and his band, or Hank Garland for a bit more of that sort of jazzy country infusion, or Jimmy Bryant for the western swing kind of vibe, or modern day players like Jim Campilongo, Marty Stewart and Kenny Vaughan, twangy 60s country players like James Burton and Roy Nichols. I mean, at the end of the day, it really is a language, and unless you've really fully immersed yourself in hearing how the locals speak it, you won't be able to pronounce things in an accurate way yourself. Okay guys, so please do like, please do comment, please make sure you're subscribed, and please share. A lot of pleasers there, but all of these things really help with my channel, and I massively do appreciate them. My goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers at some point over the next 12 months, and I think with your help that's totally doable. Okay guys, so see you next time for something completely different. Blues, folk, jazz, country, funk, reggae, we do it all here. Who knows what it's going to be next. I'll pull a genre out of the hat and we'll dig into it together. Right, take care. Cheers.